I originally went for the Blair Waldorf aesthetic with the shoulder pads and the pearls, but um, it seems that I've landed on Cowboy Carter Blackbird, but it doesn't matter because we're still going to be talking about wealth. So I was rewatching old fashioned shows, as one does, the Gossip Girls, the Sex in the Cities, the fun. But as rewatching Gossip Girl, I was realizing how dated these fashions had become and how classic Sex in the City's fashion had stayed along the lines. So maybe is this because Gossip Girl is like reaching 10 years while Sex in the City is reaching 20 years and a lot of their fashions have come in back into style, or is this because Gossip Girl fashion was never good to begin with? So don't quote me on this. But apparently for Blair and Serena, it was $5,000 to $10,000 an episode worth of clothing and jewelry that they were able to wear. So I got this from a Reddit comment, and I'm gonna link that down below on why they think that it was probably 5,000 to 10,000. Again, there were multiple outfit changes, there were multiple jewelry changes, multiple bag changes. Same with Sex in the City. So I can understand where it might be plausible, but then on the pinpoint of that, Carrie Bradshaw also had a 200K budget worth of clothes over an entire season. And that was actually from Elle, so it's looking like it might be the same due to the cost. I just want to mention the cost just to get it out of the way so I know what I'm working with in regards to fashion and what we're talking about going forward. Juice of this. Okay, so technically, I wanted to bring up culture because I think it's also an important part of their style before talking about the fashion itself. So Blair and Serena are technically, in regards, they're written from the Upper East Side, which means wealthy background. And Miranda, Samantha, and Carrie did not come from Upper New York, even though Samantha in the later seasons did live in Upper New York. And in now the reboot, Miranda and Carrie are both well off. The only person I could probably bring a similarity to is Charlotte, who did come from wealth in Connecticut because of a lot of her expertise in not only she went to the Smith College, but she also did wealthy activities such as tennis and horseback riding. So, if I had to choose, I'd want Blair to be matched up against Charlotte because I believe their styles are more similar and more aligned. And I think for the creators of Gossip Girl, they even wanted to compare her to Charlotte a little bit because their fashion icons are both um, Aubrey Hepburn, and they're both into art in a similar way. Blair's into fashion, while Charlotte is into modern art because she's a curator. For a lot of people, Serena is a mystery, especially in regards to her style analysis. For Blair, it's easier because it's very simple, classic archetype. Anybody who says Aubrey Hepburn immediately goes into a classic archetype. They like the silhouettes that they like. They like the patterns. It has to be cohesive. It's very simple. However, um, very stylish. But for Serena, I've seen a lot of different archetypes. She's considered a cool girl. She's considered a dramatic. She's considered a sexy. So um, it was very hard for her to just be coincide with like one thing, because I feel like her style probably changes the most throughout the seasons, especially from like the cool girl uniform to the ending scene wedding dress. So the person I would probably, in regards to fashion, if we were just doing it off fashion, would be Carrie, because I think Carrie and her are similar in that type. However, because we are also talking about culture before we're talking about fashion, I would also throw a ballpark estimation and consider her also a Natasha. So let's begin with the ages of the Gossip Girl girls. Blair and Serena start off as teenagers because they're still in high school, and then they go, by the end of the show, are probably in their early 30s, late 20s. And then with the Sex and the City women, you can tell that they're in their either early 30s, late 30s, or early 40s. And then by the time of the reboot, like which is probably happening like what last year, was probably they're 55 now. So that's ages. Then we ages, you also have to account for time periods. So the Sex and the City girls are 20, that 20, the 90s to the early 2000s. And for Gossip Girl, you have the uh you have, oh my gosh, late 2000s to early 2010. Yeah, because Gossip Girl ended 2013, 2014. Yeah, so early 2010. um Now let's talk about the time periods and the ages and why it's important. The 90s to early 2000s had a extreme emphasis on minimalism, especially 90s minimalism. That's what the fashion is, like trend is calling it now. And it also had an importance on consumerism, an importance on how fashion pieces would last, how fashion pieces would work, and how many fashion pieces could you pass down to your family. And that's why a lot of the pieces, even though it's not a classic aesthetic, can be considered classic. While for the Gossip Girls fashion, a lot of it was bred through not only the McBling era, which I don't know how they survived, but also the it was after Y2K, it was after the McBling era, and then this was the era of like the mustaches on the fingers and the immediate need for like the apple candy blue. So when talking about like a culture, it especially talking about the McBling era, and this was just after that, it was an emphasis on capitalism and extreme um, consumerism. So, because of that, you had a lot of layering with a lot of pieces that did not need to be layered so heavily. But because of like the style, it was just more, 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 more. We are on day two, look two, and Lord knows that I'm tired. So let's get this over with. Okay. So we're going into the fashion analysis of Serena, Blair, Charlotte, Carrie, and Natasha. Okay, our first pairing will be Blair and Charlotte. They're both brunettes, they're both classic archetypes, and they both love Aubrey Hepburn, which is their fashion icon. I think the reason Blair's style definitely does look a bit more cartoonish to Charlotte's is because, especially in the earlier seasons, it was. However, you can also see that she was a teenager. She was wearing the headband. She was wearing the Balenciaga tights, and you can definitely see that her fashion changes, and she does end up wearing way more mature looks. However, I think the main reason that her fashion has become so dated, is because we had this era of not only quiet luxury, but luxury that, even with this era of luxury, you simply show you have the piece by wearing it and not having the brand name on it. Before quiet luxury, there was the coastal grandmother aesthetic. And with the coastal grandmother aesthetic, it really harped on having very unique, simple pieces such as linen tops and linen pants. It was an idea of showing wealth without having to show brand names or brand loyalty to a certain cause. However, after saying all of that, Blair should still be considered the pinnacle of what it is to be a classy archetype, though, especially in her earlier seasons, she did look cartoonish and costumey. I think mainly it was because of her mother's influence on her. So it wasn't a reflection of Blair, but it was a reflection of Eleanor and what she wanted for Blair. And I think in the later seasons, we do get this girl turn to a woman who really does come into her own and considers herself at the pinnacle of fashion. And I think that's such a lovely thing and a lovely journey that we got to see through Blair. However, the question is still, why is fashion and Gossip Girl so dated? So I will be going on to Serena next. So we're going into Serena's style, Carrie, plus Natasha, because Natasha is from the Upper East Side, and so is Serena. So I think that it's important to talk about the two. Sometimes you have looks of Serena where she's put together, and then sometimes you have looks where she's the wild child. And I think, in considering her more adventurous styles, I will label her next to like Carrie. But for her more conservative styles, such as I think she was probably a bridesmaids, and or styles that she really just connects with, I will say that she's more of a Natasha. Carrie would usually make the pieces that she's wearing the focal point of the outfit. So let's say she was wearing a Dolce and Gabbana dress. So she would usually wear like a heavily patterned Dolce and Gabbana dress, and then she would wear a black shoe with it, or very minimal jewelry, or if not, no jewelry at all. While Serena would always be decked out in accessories, kind of cheapening the outfit. As I stated previously, especially in regards to culture, you could see that a lot of Serena's looks was due to the maximalism of the era, while Carrie was also due to like the minimalism. While there are differences between Serena and Carrie, it, like, let's say in the wintertime, it's wintertime in New York, and Carrie would wear a fur coat, while Serena would wear a leather coat or a trench coat. However, I think their main similarity is that they look alike, though I would say that Carrie's more of a petite woman and probably a petite style. I think their main similarity is that they do look alike. So they should have similar fashion analysis or similar fashion styles. So I think it's especially on the part of not just the writers, but also the production, that they made a staunch effort to put Serena in gold. However, gold has a tendency to wash, especially people with blonde hair, pout. And I think Serena was no different and fell victim to that, especially a lot of the times. Maybe not when she was wearing like the wedding dress, because you can also off course it with white, but how but when she was wearing, like, let's say there was this long gold dress with not an open back but a long v-neck, it washed her out. And maybe it's because her hair was so big, it washed her out almost completely. And it looked like a different character from what we were used to seeing. I understand why many people might be confused on why I've decided to also do a style analysis on Natasha and not just Carrie. I think Natasha's main color palettes are white and pink. And though I don't think Serena would have done well with pink, I think it would have been interesting for her main color instead of gold, instead of her being represented at this winter type, should have been white as this new beginning, new start to life. Because I think when she looked most effortlessly, most beautiful, most put together was when she was in white. And I think that also goes for the case of Natasha. Natasha wears white to symbolize her innocence in Carrie and Big's affair. And then you see her, especially when her marriage is falling apart, in more pink, light pinks, or hot pinks color palettes to symbolize that she's not done finding or wanting to symbolize her finding new love. And I think that's one of the things that we do learn from Natasha's color palette. However, though Serena's color palette does not heavily consist of white, I would still consider one of her colors being white. I think mainly that her colors are all over the place. They don't have a cohesive palette for Serena. They like to put her in more adventurous styles, which is never a bad thing. However, you can do that with a cohesive palette color that looks good on Serena. White and greens were also considered her colors next to gold, but I think I think probably white should have been her main color instead of gold. I think it could have represented um, her freedom, her introducing, re-getting to know herself, restoring faith, and also forgiveness, and her just being a better person after everything that happened. So that's the video, guys. Thank you so much. Please subscribe and like. Dislike if you didn't like it. Also, comment down what I did miss. Have a nice day. Bye.